This meeting to order. We are meeting in public, and it's the continuation of meeting 119 in the House of Commons Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. I'd like to remind participants of the following points. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. All comments should be addressed to the chair. Whether participating in person or via Zoom, please raise your hand if you wish to speak. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best as we can. We're discussing the amendments of Yes, okay. So we're discussing the amendments of MP Chang to the motion of MP Brunel-Duceppe. At the time of the suspension on Monday, MP Kwan had the floor. The following members are on the list to debate the amendments after MP Kwan, MP Derowitz, or Madam Kaibaga, and MP Kmich. So, MP Kwan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Is the mic working? Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, this is a different system that sometimes I don't necessarily know how to work it. Well, thank you very much. And resuming debate on this motion. The motion, of course, is to talk about the situation or the anticipated situation with the United States, with the Trump administration being elected on the second round. And Mr. Chair, last time in my comments at the committee, I was talking about the implications of what we experienced in the first Trump administration. You recall that Canadians were deeply concerned and dismayed about Trump's appalling immigration ban in his first administration. And I share those concerns, and I strongly believe that a travel ban against individuals based upon race, religion, or country of birth implemented by our closest neighbor cannot be tolerated by Canada. This deeply misguided policy not only sends a chill of intolerance around the world, I think it emboldened racist sentiments and contributed to unleashing overt acts of racism. In fact, I witnessed some of those and experienced some of those. In my 30-plus year in elected office, while I've always had racism and experienced racism, I had horrible messages, hateful messages sent to me, and a lot of the times anonymously. But after the Trump administration, and I was attending a rally in my riding, and it was to celebrate, actually, the International Day on the Elimination of Racism. We were marching up to Victory Square, a large group of us. At that time, there were elderly, children, family members, and we were all marching up to Victory Square and getting ready to speak at the event, to hear the speakers, people who experienced racism, particularly the elderly, the Japanese Canadian community who experienced, actually at that time, horrific Canadian policies that separated them from the family members, that actually caused them to lose their property. In Vancouver, they were actually housed at the P&E, actually, in where their staples are, where the cattle and horses were kept. In any event, they were all there to celebrate the International Day for the elimination of racism. As we gathered, we observed that there were these white supremacists that appeared in and around us. And you can see them, the Proud Boys and amongst others, you can see them all circle around us. And as things were getting intense, and I was about to be invited up to speak, and the organizer of the event got so worried that he came to me and asked whether or not we should end the event now. And I said, no, we should not, because that's exactly their goal, is to silence us, to stop us from speaking up and speaking out for equality, against discrimination, against hate, against race supremacy. So I get up on the stage, and what do? They threw a smoke bomb into the crowd. There's a giant haze in the area, purple haze. That's what happened. To disrupt the event was their intention, to get me off the stage, I suppose, to send me a message, perhaps, I don't know. And then even in spite of that, the police were there. And then in spite of that, we persisted. I wasn't going to be shut down by people who are full of hate and who want to spread their racism and their discrimination and their attempt to intimidate, to threaten us, and to silence us. So I carried on, and we finished our event. But in the meantime, the organizers had to phone for backup, if you will, because we were quite worried about the people that were there. Children at that point were crying, seniors were crying, people were clearly shaken up, and we had to call for backup to make sure that they were assisted as they made their way back, perhaps to their car, to the bus station, to the SkyTrain station, as they make their way back towards their home. That was what happened after the Trump administration travel ban and the hateful immigration policies were announced. I experienced it firsthand in terms of that emboldening of the racism by white supremacists in the community. So, Mr. Chair, I've always been proud of the fact that Canada has always been a shelter for those who need it. And during that unprecedented time, Canada stood strong on that. I still recall the Prime Minister sending a clear message. Now, I don't agree with the Liberals a lot of times, but at that moment, he actually sent a clear message to say Canada welcomes you. And I take that to mean that we are a country that will not discriminate, that we are a country that will welcome everyone, that we are a country that recognizes the contributions of the multicultural community, of the ethnic community, of migrants, of immigrants, of international students, of newcomers. And to say that it doesn't matter about the color of your skin, that we all belong. Despite Canada's very checkered and some very dark history on racism and discriminatory laws that said, for example, for the Chinese community, a head tax was imposed on them after the railway was built, after lives were lost, after cheap labor were to be had, and when the project was done, they tried to do everything to get rid of us, including putting a head tax in place. There's been some very, very dark history in Canada's history. But in spite of all of that, at that moment, I thought that was an important message to be sent. And that it was critically important that we establish a clear path for Canada to step in and do our part. So, Mr. Chair, I believe that all committee members are well aware of that situation. We all experienced it. We all saw it. And people were risking their life and limb to come to Canada. Why? Because simply they did not feel that the U.S. is a safe country for them. When you have the president, at that time, Trump, basically telling you that certain race is going to be banned from coming to Canada and they don't want you there, you get a kind of a clear message. And you can imagine if Canada, that hatred washed over to Canada, where I experienced firsthand the discriminatory sentiments that were hurled at me, you can imagine what it was like for people in the United States at that time. Then on January 11th, 2017, Canadians saw stories about Sadhu Mohammed, at the time a 24-year-old refugee who nearly died making the dangerous journey from the United States to Canada, crossing into Manitoba on Christmas Eve. And you can imagine, right now, it's not quite Christmas, it's end of or early December here in Ottawa. Although this year, I must say, the weather is such that I think the cold weather came late. I think this yesterday, I believe, was the first snow day here in Ottawa, which worries me in terms of climate change. But that said, you can feel the air and the chill in the air. In Manitoba, I went to Manitoba, actually, and with my colleague Leah Gazan, and we held a press conference at that very border where Sadu Mohammed crossed over. And oh my God, it was cold that day. The wind was howling. We were standing out there. I was so cold that my face felt frozen, and I felt like I couldn't speak. And why were we gathered there? We were gathered there to talk about the Safe Third Country Agreement and the implications of what the Canadian government was doing at that time with the changes to the Safe Third Country Agreement. So, sorry, Mr. Chair, you're doing some hand signaling thing. I'm not quite sure what's happening.
Not you. I was talking to Mr. McLean.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought you were signaling something to me. In any event, we were gathered there to talk about that with Mr. Sadu Mohammed sharing his experience and for us to highlight the dangerous, the perilous journey that he had to take and what it means when Canada take these actions and for the lives of people who are being persecuted. For Mr. Mohammed, by way of background, he was born in Ghana. He fled, hoping to rebuild his life in the United States, out of fear for his life due to his sexual orientation. And I know the committee members would be aware of this because that was major news in the community, and the media did cover this story extensively. Mr. Mohammed is gay, and we know that homosexuality is illegal in Ghana. It is punished under a section of the Criminal Code titled Unnatural Carnal Knowledge. A 2012 U.S. State Department Human Rights report also pointed to widespread discrimination, police harassment, and extortion attempts, as well as citing several instances of violent mob-style assaults being carried out against suspected homosexuals. Sadu Mohammed made an asylum claim in the United States after arriving in San Diego in 2015. He then spent a year in a detention center. And while in detention, he did not have access to legal counsel. He lacked the freedom to gather materials to support his case. And as a Harvard report, to which I'll speak to later today, this is all too common. And ultimately, his claim was rejected. He felt that he had no choice, so he then headed north, meeting another man from Ghana in the Minneapolis, Minnesota area. The man took a bus from there to Grand Forks to North Dakota, and then took a $400 cab ride to the spot near the border. And that's where they met each other, actually. And the men then embarked on the most dangerous part of their journey. They walked for at least 7 hours, at times through waist-deep snow in minus 18-degree weather, trying to cross into Canada. And of course, they were poorly equipped for the conditions. They tried to hitchhike for hours to see if they can get some assistance, but that failed. They were stuck in the snow, you see, and it was so cold that their pants were frozen, stuck in the snow. In fact, part of his pants had been pulled off. Then he tried to actually take off his pants to see if he can move forward, but he couldn't. He was frozen, stuck in the snow. Can you imagine? And at that point, he told me that he thought he was going to die. He thought he was going to die. They tried to get attention from people to no avail. And then luckily, along that way, a truck drove by and saw the two men stuck in the snow and stopped. And they called 911. And help did come. Mr. Mohammed did not lose his life that day, but he ended up losing all the digits of both hands. His fingers and his thumb had to be amputated as a result of extreme frostbite that he has suffered trying to cross to the border. And despite that, he said the journey was worth it. Now, we should also put this in context. Mr. Mohammed is an athlete. He's a soccer player. And we could imagine how important it is in terms of their physicality in that sport for him. But that said, to save his life, he lost the digits of his fingers on both hands. And he said that journey was worth it. And he also said that he was happy to be here meaning Canada, because he knew to go back to his country, to Ghana, it would mean that he would lose his life. So that was one story, Mr. Chair, but that's not the only story about people fleeing persecution because the United States is not a safe country for them. I don't know if we can understand that. I have never experienced it myself, to be persecuted in that way. I don't know what that is like, and to fear for your life, for being who you are, for loving the people that you love, and to be so desperate to take on such a dangerous journey. That's where people were at. That's where Mr. Mohammed was at. Mr. Mohammed, I invited him, by the way, Mr. Chair, to this committee when we studied the Safe Third Country Agreement in this very committee, and he offered his perspectives. And afterwards, I was outside and I recorded his story. If for nothing else, just to remind myself how important this work is, what it really means to hear from someone who directly experienced that. I never put that video, although he gave me permission to put it on the public record.
I believe, Chair, that the bells were going off for votes, and you don't have consent to continue.
That's what I was trying to figure it out. So is there a unanimous consent to carry through? Or
No.
No, there's no unanimous consent. We'll come back 10 minutes after the vote is done. Thank you. we will be giving the floor to MP Kwan. MP Kwan, you have the floor. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just before the vote, I was talking about the history of what had happened in the last administration. Only just one story of Mr. Sadhu Mohammed, and there are other instances to which I can go on and bring to the committee's attention. But at this juncture, though, I'd like to move an amendment to the motion as follows. So I will get my staff to send the language in both French and English to the clerk for distribution. In the meantime, I'll just read this onto the record. So the motion reads. Yes.
Because we already working on a submit.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the motion reads as follows at the moment, and then I will highlight the parts where I am amending. So the language is that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee undertake a study on the implications for Canada. So adding new words, this is where the change are, and for undocumented people and people with temporary status in the United States. So that's the change. Then it goes on to say, back to the original motion, of the measures announced by Donald Trump during the U.S. presidential campaign regarding the deportation of, and here I add in new language, undocumented, and then back to the original language, persons, then adding new language, and their family members, including children, who are U.S. citizens. And then goes on with original language, who are in the United States. And we strike, my amendment would be to strike the word illegally, and then adding further new language as follows. Examine the proposal by U.S. President-elect Donald Trump to carry out the, quote, largest deportation program in American history, end quote, of millions of undocumented residents of the U.S., including his stated intentions to declare a national emergency and deploy the U.S. military to carry out mass deportations to determine if the U.S. still qualifies as a safe country for refugees. And then the next clause, new word, request. Original language, the Canadian federal government. Then new language, to table their. Original language, plan to ensure border security and compliance with federal immigration statutes and policies. New language, and to examine its implication in compliance with Canada's obligations under the Charter and international law, including the 1951 Refugees Convention, to which Canada is a signatory of for 55 years. And that the study takes into account this committee's report on asylum seekers at Canada's border that recommended the Safe Third Country Agreement exemptions for gender-based claims and claims from moratorium countries in recognition of the risk of harms these claimants face in the U.S. prior to the current deportation issues. So those would be my amendments. I believe, Ms.
From MP Kmitch, please go ahead.
Chair, having heard what the motion is doing and amending, I don't believe this motion, this amendment is in order because it changes the substance of the original motion without actually amending it's a sub-amendment, but it doesn't amend the amendment. It's like an entirely new thing that changes the total substance of it. I don't believe it's in order, and like the chair's ruling on it.
Okay. I'm going to suspend for a couple of minutes. for raising the point of order. And I'm also reading from chapter 12 about sub-amendments. Most of what applies to amendments applies equally to sub-amendments. Each sub-amendment must be strictly relevant to and not at variance with the sense of the corresponding amendment and must seek to modify the amendment and not the original question. A sub-amendment cannot enlarge upon the amendment, introduce new matters foreign to it, or differ in substance from it. The sub-amendment cannot strike out all of the words in an amendment, thereby nullifying it. The Speaker has ruled that the proper course in such a case would be for the House to defeat the amendment. Debate on sub-amendment is restricted to the words added to the omitted from the original motion by amendment. Since sub-amendments cannot be further amended, a member wishing to change one under debate must wait until it is defeated and then propose a new sub-amendment. So basically, we, according to this, and it is my interpretation is that this is out of order, and we have to deal with Mr. Chang's amendment first, and then if MP Kwan want to bring it forward, she has full right. So I'll give the floor to MP Kwan.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for that clarification. Then, as I understand your ruling then, that because this will not be deemed to be in order as a sub-amendment, but however, when the sub-amendment is dealt with from Mr. Chen, then in that case, I would be able to come back and move these as an amendment.
That's correct.
Separate and apart. Okay, well, I'm okay with that. Well, in that case, I'll take it as giving notice on the amendments that will be brought about at the appropriate time. Because I think that what those elements do is to expand the study and to take in crucial information and important for the committee to evaluate if we're going to undertake such a study. So, Mr. Chair, I'm fine with that ruling, and I will not challenge your ruling from that perspective. And so, proceeding, I'm going to seek your guidance here in terms of process with respect to the next steps. I could go on with my deliberation on the matter and offer my comments. However, I think that you wanted to ask the question of the committee, so I will cede the floor to you at this point with respect to that. I have much more to say about this, and then perhaps we can come back to it after you have your intervention.
Thank you, MP Kwan. Honorable members, my thought process is this, that we have postponed the witnesses that we bring in many times. Monday, we already have a business planned. There is only, handful of meetings left. And if we can get this business, the ones that we have on schedule to be out of the way. So if we continue with this debate, I know MP Kwan, have tremendous knowledge, background, and she can kept going on this, and then we might be, over this for a few days. And my thought process was, if we adjourn this meeting and then go back to our regular business Monday, that is what my plan suggestion to you is. But again, committee decides its own work process. And I have Mr. Reddycop. Mr. Reddycop.
Thank you, Chair. I guess to aid in that discussion, could you please tell us what the plan is for next week?
Sure. Certainly, the Monday. So I would like to inform that the absence of response from both ministers I have requested the clerk to invite officials to appear on Monday. So December the 9th, regarding the study of the issuance of the passport to human smugglers. So CBSA and Public Safety have concluded that their involvement in this matter related to passport and human smuggling is limited. Additionally, the RCMP is unable to provide information at this time due to ongoing nature of the investigation. As a result, Public Safety, RCMP, and CBSA are declining the invitation since only IRCC and passport program can appear, and they will be invited on Monday.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, could you just repeat that part? Did you say CBSA declined the invitation? Did I hear that correctly?
RCMP and CBSA are declining the invitation, as CBSA and Public Safety have concluded that their involvement in matters related to passports and human smuggling is limited.
Oh, my goodness. And could you clarify also, Mr. Chair, that the ministers also declined?
That is correct. I mean, they not declined, but they are not available on that day.
Did they say when they might be available? Did we seek that information from them?
We're still trying to, clerk is still trying to work with them.
Okay. I think Mr. Redekop, sorry, I was asking those questions for
quite a few
clarification.
other
I think Mr.
people on
Redekop
the-
has the floor, and then I would like to have the floor after.
Sure. Mr. Redekop.
Well, just with respect to the CBSA, so to be clear, it's not that they just can't show up on a particular day, it's that they don't think they need to show up.
That's what it is.
That makes absolutely no sense, because that's a huge piece of the whole puzzle that we're trying to look at here. So I think I need to raise the fact that that's
We
not,
can always subpoena them if they say no.
I think we might want to consider that, yes.
We always have protocols in place that we can use as a committee. So we see what I mean. This is what they are saying.
Yeah.
Not accept. We are not accepting
Yeah.
it.
So
okay?
I guess
so
that would be.
acceptance is one thing. Saying is one thing. Declining them is one thing. Us as a committee accepting is the other. So committee, have its own destiny. So if committee members want to subpoena them, then they think that they must be here. We can always bring them through that process. So,
Okay, so-
okay, and I would go to you. Okay, I can go to Mr. Brunel after you.
Yeah, so I guess if that's the case, then I've never been involved in subpoenaing somebody before, I don't think. So is that a motion we have to make, or how does that work?
Yeah,
Because I would like to, if it is, I would like to move a motion that we subpoena the CBSA to come to this committee.
Sure, there's a motion. Mr. If I come back to you, I will still give you the floor, Brad. I will give you the floor if I can listen to 1 second to Mr. Brunel. Mr. Brunel.
Sí, premièrement,
Well, first of all, we're just learning about this today. It's very surprising for everyone. But if we start talking about subpoenaing people, maybe before doing that, these people should understand that we can do that. That's a tool that's available to us. So maybe to our clerk, we can reach out to them again, that there is a possibility that if they're actually saying no, then we will be compelled to subpoenaing them. So rather than going directly to that tool in the toolbox, we need to reach out and make them understand that this is a tool we have. And if we want for them to appear, we can make that happen. But I think journalists will pick up on that, and they will run with that story. But if I were in your situation, I would maybe play it nice with them, tell them maybe it's not a good idea that they're saying no. That's what I'm suggesting, but maybe members would be in agreement. Maybe they would have other recommendations. But to me, If it were up to me, that's how I would manage the situation.
Excellent idea, and we will do that. I have a couple of speakers, MP Kwan. So I have MP Jahid, and then I still have the floor with Mr. Radikop. If you want, I can just go quickly to MP Kwan, come back to you. Okay. So MP Jahid, then we'll go to MP Kwan.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to check, like, are the officials from IRCC already scheduled for Monday? So it will be 2 hours with them, or we have other witnesses also?
No, we have 1 hour with them.
1 hour. And the second hour, who is coming?
We haven't planned yet, and we can figure that out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and MP Kwan.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It would seem to me that we're not ready to go on Monday. I don't think it's good enough to just have IRCC officials before us. I think that we should go back to request the RCMP as well as CBSA to appear before the committee. I don't know if subpoenaing them is the right approach or the next step. My understanding is that the committee could move a motion to compel them to come before we subpoena someone to come. Maybe there's some intermediate steps to get there. The other thing that I think is absolutely critical.
I see the consensus, so I'm going to go back to MP Kwan. Go to your original motion then, because
Sorry, I'm not done yet on my comment related to this matter. But related to it as well is that I don't think it's good enough for the ministers to say that they're not available. So I would like to ensure that the clerk continue to pursue the availability of the ministers so that they can come to the committee. I think that they need to come and answer these questions. And we can't just sort of say, oh, well, shoot, they can't come, and then we just move on. There has to be a really good justification why they can't come. And I think this is an important matter that we need the ministers here.
I'm going to close this chapter, MP Chang, because I have to go, because the thing is, this was not part of the business. I have heard enough from the fellows. I think there is we might be able to continue with the debate that the way it's going on right now, unless you have a very compelling point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to remind the committee that we are still dealing with my amendment and Mr. Bruno Decep's motion that's on the floor. We need to vote on that before we carry on.
Sure. Okay, if that's the case, then MP Kwan, you have the floor. Please continue.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I know that you were just trying to facilitate a process, and I had understood that the process for Monday was such that we would get all these officials here, but then upon your clarification, that clearly is not the case, and I think there's more work that needs to be done to bring them here. Back to the amendment and the motion around border in the USA. And so before all this happened and before the vote, I was talking about what had happened in the previous administration, and I highlighted the example of Mr. Sadhu Mohammed and his situation. And I had noted that I had private conversations, actually on many occasions now, with Mr. Sadhu Mohammed, by the way, and his experiences and what it meant for him. I'm happy to report to the committee, though, too, that in my most recent meeting with him, I learned that he's now not only working, but he's also volunteering, also coaching young people soccer. And because that's his profession, that he was a professional soccer player before he came to Canada. And so not only is he working, he's also volunteering in the community, in support of the community, coaching young people with soccer. And then, of course, trying to sort of reach out to those who are refugees as well, to make sure that their engagement in the community is supported. And I just think this is really important to note. Right now we're in an environment where people talk about immigrants and migrants and refugees as though they're just a drain in our society, that they're no good, and we got to close the borders to them. We need to kick them out. We need to deport them. We need to, blame them for all the problems that the government has created, such as the housing crisis and so on. And when people come to Canada, not only do they contribute to Canada, they contribute to their community, both economically, socially, and also as a volunteer. On other stories of people experiencing persecution and the desperation that they're faced with, what do? We know that there was another heart-wrenching situation. On February the 8th, 2017, we heard the heartbreaking story of the 2-year-old making the trip from Minnesota into Manitoba as part of a group of over 20 individuals, Mr. Chair. And it was reported in the media that at that time, the temperature was minus 20 degrees. So you can imagine how cold and frigid that weather is. And the family the people who were trying to get to safety, they were, of course, tired in this long trek, and they were ill-equipped. The child, particularly, was finding the entire journey unbearable. And it was reported that the child had said to the mother at the time, and I quote, "Mom, I want to die. You can go into Canada. I want to die in the snow. You can go, Mom, into Canada." End quote. That from the mouth of a child who was on a trek to make it to safety. I just need the committee members to take that in for a minute and to understand what that means. When we talk about border security, when we talk about heightening all of this, what it means for the people who are faced with persecution and the implications for them, and what they have to go through to try to get to safety. If you are a mother of a child who you know that is being persecuted in a country where you're not welcome, and that you may well be deported back to where you had escaped the violence, the persecution, that you might be sent back, would you not do everything you can to protect your child and get your child to safety? I know I would, in a heartbeat. I know I would. I would walk through hot coals to try and bring my family to safety. And that's what these individuals are doing. In their instance, they walk through the snow in minus 20-degree weather. Now, I'm not a good person in cold weather, If it's like 0 degrees, then I think I'm going to die. And I'm wearing a giant parka and everything, and with snow boots and so on. But you can imagine being out in the extreme cold for an extended period of time if you're ill-equipped. And even if you might have snow boots, I imagine that if you're trekking through the snow, it will get wet, your feet will get cold. And if you're small, if you're a child, your ability to retain heat is even further minimized. That is the reality of what people are faced with. And I really hope that we don't become a country that forces people in such desperation. But that's what we're doing. That's what's happening with the Safe Third Country Agreement. That's what happened in the first round with the Trump administration. You can imagine how that will escalate in this second round. Mr. Chair, on February the 22nd, 2017, there was another story, the story of Nemo Ahmed. And that was told by the CBC, was reported by the CBC. Ahmed at the time, was 23, and is part of a minority group originally from southern Somalia. She was said to be married in July at that time, but community members in her community were against the union because her would-be husband was not a member of her group. So on the day of her wedding, a group of armed individuals came to her mother's house and murdered her mother, her husband, and other members of her family. So Ahmed spent her wedding day and many more following the fleeing and hoping to rebuild her life in safety. So after traveling from Somalia to Ecuador to Colombia and Costa Rica, she eventually made her way to Texas, where she was detained and then deported to Minneapolis to await her asylum hearing. The fear of the Trump administration administration's discriminatory policies toward people like her from Somalia amid belief she had no choice but to make the trip to Canada instead, Mr. Chair. And she stated, and I quote, "I'm Black, I'm Somali, I'm Muslim, the three things the president doesn't like. To him, I'm a terrorist, but I'm not. I don't want to harm anyone. That's the last thing I want to do. All I'm looking for is protection," end quote. That was the circumstances to which she found herself in and why she needed to get to a safe country, why the United States for her is not a safe country. And these are just some of the people who feel that they had no choice. These are just some examples, not all of them, where they felt that they had to make that journey, a dangerous journey. It's not like it's a walk in the park. It's not like a stroll, a casual stroll, evening stroll or anything like that. They have to make this dangerous journey from the United States to Canada because they don't feel that they can be safe in the United States. They don't feel that they can have a fair chance at a hearing to obtain asylum and safety because they don't feel that they belong, because they don't feel that they're welcome, and they fear in that process that they would be deported back to their country of origin. Can you imagine if this woman, who on her wedding day saw people come to her home and murdered her family, her newly wedded husband before her eyes, and then to entertain the prospect that she might be sent back to that country? Can you imagine what would happen to her? And what that would be like? Mr. Chair, I can't imagine it. The fear in her heart, the anxiety that she feels, the desperation, honestly, the desperation. Either you get sent back and get killed in a violent way, or you make a dangerous journey for the chance that you might have a shot to live in safety and have protection. That's all that she was seeking. She's not a terrorist. She's not trying to kill anyone. Isn't that what humanity is about when we see something like that? Isn't that what we should be trying to do to be supportive of each other? Mr. Chair, during that period, in addition to the political and social upheaval that continues in Somalia, that had caused countless Somalis to flee, Somalia was facing a severe drought at that time. So in addition to the potential violence, there's also another challenge to which not just her, but all Somalians would be faced with, which was the severe drought. The UN had estimated that 363,000 children were acutely malnourished at that time, with 270,000 more at risk. And that was in 2017. And they further stated that there was only a 2-month window to avert a drought catastrophe. And that was the reality that people were safe with. So we need to be very clear when we're talking about the individuals abandoning their claims in the United States to come to Canada. They have already fled serious and, in many cases, life-threatening situations in the hope that they could find safety. And under those circumstances, their fears that they would not have access to a fair and just hearing or procedures are not unfounded. In the face of what you saw with the United States, with the Trump administration, with his travel ban, and with his spread of hatred towards those folks. On January the 30th, 2017, Amnesty International wrote an open letter to the Minister of Immigration, the then Minister of Immigration, Minister Hussain, as well as to the Prime Minister and Minister Freeland. And they urged the Canadian government to immediately suspend the designation of the United States as a safe third country. And in that letter, Amnesty International quite clearly states, and I quote, "What has become clear is that all of the developments involve dramatic measures that blatantly violate numerous international refugee and human rights legal obligations, including under the 1951 Refugee Convention and its 1967 Protocol, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the Convention Against Torture."
Chair, just because we're approaching the 1 hour clock, and I just want to make sure that I put this on the record, that you do not have consent to adjourn the meeting.
Okay. Continue, please.
Okay. And as I was saying, Amnesty International stated clearly, and they wrote, and I quote, let me just start from the beginning of where the quote was. "What has become is that all of the developments involve dramatic measures that blatantly violate numerous international refugee and human rights legal obligations, including under the 1951 Refugee Convention and its 1967 Protocol, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the Convention Against Torture. Most directly, crucial principles with respect to non-discrimination, non-refoulement, arbitrary arrest and imprisonment, fair trials, and the rights of children have already been infringed. We are strongly of the view that, in this context, Canada cannot wait to see how things continue to develop in the days and weeks to come." End quote. That was from Amnesty International. And while the original discriminatory executive orders that the letter responded to were struck down by the courts, Amnesty had the foresight to know it was unlikely those would be the only attempts that the Trump administration would pursue. And they stated at the time, and I quote, "There is every reason to believe that there may be further changes, including through additional executive orders," end quote. So we know that some of the original discriminatory executive orders have remained in force, Mr. Chair. And we know that additional anti-immigrant executive orders have been signed. And we know that additional travel ban had been attempted. And over that period, we also know that irregular border crossings from the United States into Canada has sharply increased. Amnesty International took an observational fact-finding mission at the Canada-U.S. border in Manitoba.
I know you have lots to say, but the watch is past 1 o'clock. I have no choice but to suspend the meeting till Monday.